Welcome to one more edition of Politics and Right. I'm Egberto Wills, your host. Thank you so kindly for being with us, folks. Today we have a special guest. We have Jason Miller, who is a faith-based advocate and organizer originally from Toledo, Ohio, and serves as the co-chair of the Faithful Democracy WIC working group. After earning his BA in History and Religious Studies, Jason entered a year of service with the Jesuit Volunteer Corps in Nashville, Tennessee, working at Catholic Charities Refugee Services. He then relocated to Washington, D.C. area to complete a master's degree in conflict analysis, good stuff, and resolution in George Mason University. Jason has since devoted himself to faith-based communications and advocacy work on behalf of economic justice and climate justice issues, and currently works as the Director of Campaigns and Development at the Franciscan Action Network. Jason, welcome to Politics and Right. How are you doing today?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm great. That was, you gave the full bio there. I need to take you, that was the next time on an elevator. Can I take you with me? Or
yes, you can, but you know what? Let me tell you what I love.
Yeah.
Especially in these times. People that are just doing good work, because that is what we need. And you just have to tell me social justice, economic justice, racial justice, and you got me, because we need so much of that right now. Anyhow, tell me a little bit about yourself that I didn't say before we get into some of the meat of what I want to discuss with you.
Sure. Well, sometimes those words, social justice, racial justice, I'm glad you love them. Unfortunately, not everybody does. So
right.
I'm sure your audience.
I love your little dog. I mean,
yeah,
that brings a reality
we're dog
to
sitting,
it.
so it makes it real, right? As
yes.
I was trying to take a real important point there, and I don't even know what it was, but I'm glad that you're into social and racial justice, because sometimes those are words that are such loaded terms these days, which is really unfortunate, because yeah, I'm doing good work, but I learned in JVC, that in Jesuit Volunteer Corps, that everybody's doing work and everybody's just trying to do what they can, and that's really what it's all about. And I've been fortunate and blessed to come to DC and work in faith-based advocacy, but that doesn't make me any better or worse than anybody else. But I'm thankful that I'm doing it, and I'm glad to be here.
Let me tell you, I'm a very this is a very political show, progressive
Sure.
show. And personally, I am a humanist, so I don't do the religious thing generally. But one of the reasons I really liked what you do, what many of the others in your domain do, is that what we found over the last several decades actually is religion has been used to corrupt a sect of the religious, our religious body has been used to corrupt our entire body politic. And in so doing, they have they have gone to the point where they have made doing good by we the people a bad thing. They've adapted a sort of a socio-economic balance that is completely off whack. What would you say to that?
Yeah, unfortunately, I would agree. There are issues that used to not be partisan, right? And I think a lot of people don't understand that there's political and there's partisan.
Right.
And things that, yes, might be political aren't necessarily partisan. When I worked in refugee resettlement in Nashville with Jesuit Volunteer Corps, I worked with former refugees, and I worked with, a number of conservatives. Refugee resettlement wasn't a partisan issue, and it hurts. It pains me that now it's such a loaded political partisan issue. And voting rights, it's with our work with Faithful Democracy Today. You have 360 plus bills in state legislatures in 47 states they're trying to suppress the vote. And when did access to the vote become partisan? It shouldn't be. Certainly it's political, but it shouldn't be partisan. And there's a misunderstanding of that. And there's this twisting of this idea by folks, and I will say on the right, or neoliberal, even, if you will.
Yes, you are correct. Yes.
There's this idea that, well, if you're a Christian or you're a person of faith, you act a certain way and you believe certain things, well, shouldn't you as a person of faith or as a Christian believe in access to the vote? Isn't human dignity a big part of being who a follower of Jesus is? I certainly think so. And that's something that we ground our work in with Faithful Democracy, is that if all human beings have dignity and worth, then they should have access to the vote. They shouldn't have their voices drowned out by big money in politics. But unfortunately, there's this misunderstanding of, oh, Christian means to be, you want smaller government, or that you're against certain things or for other things. But that, to me, that's not really what it means to be a Christian. I'm a Christian first. I'm a Catholic first before any political label. And to me, that means that all human beings have dignity and worth. And all of us on the Christian left, all these people also say, oh, where the Christian left, it's coming out of nowhere. Well, we've been here all along. We just maybe didn't have the megaphone that other folks had.
Now, let me tell you, Jason, and that is that is one of the reasons when I was introduced to you that I really wanted to have you. Like I said, I'm not a religious show. I'm not religious or anything like that, but religion plays a big part in the American experience. And what we've seen is one sect within our religion, and not a good one at all, have taken over what it is to be religious. And many people who won't necessarily have those beliefs think that it's their responsibility to have those negative beliefs that's been inculcated onto them from the right. And I think people like yourself who are actually doing very good work. I didn't want to immediately get into Faithful Democracy and what you're doing with Faithful Democracy, but I wanted to bring to the floor first the problems that you guys are trying to solve. And I think one of the major problems is who are Christians, who are religious people, and for it not to automatically mean those people who are given the sustenance that others need. We care about the baby as a blastoma, as a fetus, but we don't care about the baby after it's been born to make them whole. We care about we don't care about treating the people, immigrants, the way Jesus would have treated that person going into their home. We don't feed the hungry the way Jesus took turn bread. And I mean, I was formerly.
You got it. I was going to let you just keep quoting the Bible.
No, well, I grew up a Christian. Okay, so please, you can continue that because.
Well, I'm a good Catholic, so I try not to quote the Bible. I like to quote Pope Francis, but you're right. I mean, welcome the stranger, right? And that's a key component in both the Hebrew scriptures and the Christian scriptures. And and that is a component of Catholic social teaching is, right, obviously we need to, I'm speaking as a Catholic, care for the unborn, but that also means caring for the unborn, like you said, after that fetus is born and throughout that person's life. I mean, if people are hungry, if they are thirsty, if they are without a home, we can't discard them. We can't push them aside. As Pope Francis says, we have this throwaway culture. And it shows that he's right. And we definitely have some priorities that are backwards in this country when we just throw people away.
Now, you earlier in our commentary, you said one of the issues with many of the religious on the right is they have a big megaphone. And my question then is, how do we help? I'm trying to do the little part that I can. How do we help those who, the religious folks who really want to help people? How do we get them that megaphone? How do we make sure that you guys are expressive as you need to be to give those people who are religious and think they need a place, but that place seems to be only there on the right? How do we do it?
Well, FranciscanAction.org is our website. We do take donations. We are a nonprofit, right? We're talking about how there is that big megaphone. Unfortunately, money does play a role both in our politics, but also
repeat that. I want to make sure people get that.
Yeah, FranciscanAction.org. And if you're not able to make a donation, that's okay. But I felt like that was the first thing I had to say. Certainly, you can sign up to our e-newsletter. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Get engaged. If it's not with FAN, as we call ourselves, it's calling your members of Congress, it's calling your senators, it's picking up the phone, not just tweeting. Emails, okay, but phone calls are best. And if you're like me, I like to leave those messages after 5 p.m. You don't even have to talk to another person. So if it's to advocate for S1, the For the People Act, if it's to advocate for the Green New Deal, if it's for comprehensive immigration reform, pick up your phone, because your senators need to hear from you. And I don't care what state you are in, who your senators are, you still need to do that. And as it's important to say, to do that as people of faith, and say, I'm a person of faith and this is what I believe.
Now, you gave the Franciscan website, and so far with your thing, I've been quoting the faithfuldemocracy.us.
Yeah.
What's the relationship, and should people
Sure.
be going to both websites to do their
Please
thing?
go to both. So I am, as I think you mentioned in my bio, the Director of Campaigns and Development at the Franciscan Action Network. And I also help to co-facilitate and co-lead the Faithful Democracy Coalition.
Tell us a little bit about Faithful Democracy.
Yeah, and so what Faithful Democracy is, it's a coalition of faith-based organizations and advocacy groups and even denominations that work on good governance and democracy issues. We're mostly based in DC, but we've really been expanding our reach and working to find other faith voices, just not in the DC Beltway bubble. And and one of the great things that we're doing, you can find out about our work at faithfuldemocracy.us. You can sign on to our voters covenant there. And we're advocating for getting big money out of politics and for access for all people to vote, all citizens. And so that's why we're advocating right now for the For the People Act, S1. And we just put an organizer on the ground in West Virginia. And that's going to be important now that we're really expanding our work, organizing on the ground, just not only doing, sort of inside the Beltway advocacy.
I got a rant from one of our listeners that I am going to post sometime soon. And he spoke about progressives in general. He was talking about Democrats, but I think it covers progressives as well, have just about ceded the rural vote, ceded places like West Virginia, Appalachia, which really you should have a huge audience based on the needs and what's going on in those areas. How is Faithful Democracy or even the Franciscan Network thinking about addressing that and not necessarily concentrating in the big areas of population expanse?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think oftentimes, on the East Coast here, there is sort of that divide of that DC sort of, they want to write off West Virginia. They want to write off Toledo. They want to write off Kansas. I have a good friend of mine, a former colleague who is from Wichita, and he's saying, don't forget about us. If we organize around issues, if we truly do the work, we can win folks over. I mean, I always point to my fiance is from St. Louis. If you look at Missouri, right, they always vote for a candidate with a certain letter after their name, but they also vote for things like healthcare and for supporting unions. And if you vote, if there are issue areas, if there's ballot initiatives around issues, they always vote for the more progressive issue, but they're voting for the more conservative candidate. So clearly there's a disconnect there, and it's about messaging, and it's not forgetting about and leaving behind those folks in St. Louis, in Wichita, and in Toledo, in West Virginia.
I think that is so important, and I think that is a lesson not learned by either the Democratic Party and many of the progressive groups that are stationed in many of our cities, as far as not trying to create a base in these areas. Because when we do polling on issues, and you're absolutely correct, specifically when we do polling on issues like Medicare for all or the contents of the Green New Deal and many other aspects of what we would normally call the progressive agenda, what you find is that they're not just majorities, but in most of these issues, there are super majority support from the rank and file of not party, but of people. And it needs, I think, from all aspects. And I think that is where somebody like yourself is so important, because you represent a demographic that can go into a West Virginia with a different thought process, a different methodology to actually, build a base. And I wish more would do it. I understand that, I'm looking at your Faithful Democracy and see that, I mean, you're all over the place with the support that you've got. I mean, from Jewish to Mormon to Christian to Islamic.
Yeah, we're truly interfaith.
And I'm like, this is the type of faithful democracy I'm looking for.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right, not just on things like the Green New Deal and Medicare for all, but if you look specifically at polling in West Virginia, people overwhelmingly support getting big money out of politics. They support increasing voter access. They support the For the People Act. So why aren't, and Senator Manchin, he co-sponsored in the last Congress, but why aren't Senator Manchin and Senator Capito, why aren't they supporting the For the People Act? That's a good question, because, I know that they are about listening to their constituents and listening to people in the Mountaineer State. Well, look at the polling. So it's in some ways it's about messaging, right? I'm sure you know that. And it's that megaphone of money on the other side, if you will, but it's also, how those messages are used and how they're often used against issues that people actually do support.
Well, let me tell you, Jason, we are surely going to do our part to get your message out and those who you represent to get that message out. And we hope that you'll be on many other platforms so we can get this kind of message out, because it's important that we do. Now, I always ask this question at the end, and that is, please tell me what you want to tell our audience that I simply didn't ask you about.
Oh, there's so much. I already gave the plug, right, for the Franciscan Action Network website, franciscanaction.org, and Faithful Democracy, faithfuldemocracy.us. I already said, please call your senators. And we have resources on our website if you're like, I've never done that. How do I do that? Pick up the phone after 5 p.m. and call that switchboard or Google your senators' numbers. Tell them that you care about these issues, right? That you care about the For the People Act, that you care about the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, that you care about DC statehood. I don't want to forget that issue as well, is that it often gets lost in the shuffle. You have a city that's 45% African-American and over 700,000 people. That's more than Vermont, that's more than Wyoming, and they are disenfranchised. And it's, again, that shouldn't be a partisan political issue. That shouldn't be a partisan, they're all going to vote a certain way. Well, but shouldn't they just be allowed to vote and have representation? We're taxed here in DC. So why don't we have an equal voice and an equal say? And let me just say too, that for all those folks on the left, for Dems, Puerto Rican statehood's a completely separate thing, and that's a whole other podcast. But certainly for DC, don't forget about us. And again, we advocate for that with Faithful Democracy, and we advocate for so many issues in the spirits of Francis and Claire with Franciscan Action Network, immigration reform, climate change, gun violence prevention. We just had another mass shooting in San Jose yesterday. What is it? I guess it's just a sad reality that we have to live with now. The pandemic is ending. People are going to be outside more. Does that mean we're going to have more mass shootings? I mean, it just shouldn't be that way. And we're so gridlocked here on Capitol Hill in DC. And that's why we need people to pick up their phones and call their senators, especially people of faith, and say, hey, I want these bills passed. I want comprehensive immigration reform. I want comprehensive gun violence prevention legislation. I want the For the People Act. I want the Green New Deal.
I think that is so important. Just before we leave here, the gun issue again, it's bewildering because most Americans want some sort of good, effective gun control. No other
Yeah.
country suffers multiple mass shootings several times a month. If
Mhm.
people can't understand that if there's a preponderance of guns out there, that people will use it. Yesterday I wrote a quick little post where I said, because here in Texas, we're now allowing
Mhm.
anybody to just go out and buy a gun if you're over 18 or over
Right.
21. I don't
But
remember
but
quite
then you're
what.
also passing voting restrictions at the same time.
Exactly. And what that means is, if everybody has a gun and somebody's on the freeway, a good person can have a bad moment.
Yep.
And a good person with a bad moment with a gun can turn that person into a murderer.
Yeah, a deadly moment. Yeah, that's for sure. I don't believe in that whole good person with a gun thing. I mean, both of my parents are they're retired public school teachers, and my dad decades ago, I think I can say this in public. He was an NRA member. Before it got super political. He grew up in the country, grew up hunting and shooting guns, and that's decades ago the NRA wasn't political. And I asked him one time, once that started to come up, would you have a gun in the classroom, knowing that he would be comfortable with guns and that and he said no. He said I would never. He couldn't ever bring himself. If I would trust anyone with a gun, it would be him. But he said he would never be able, even if there was a mass shooter at his school, to bring himself to actually shoot another student. He just couldn't bring himself to do that. And that was the narrative for a long time, right? Oh, just arm people, just get more guns out there. But we know that more guns, if you have a gun in a home, there's a higher incident rate of death and accidents.
In that,
So more guns are not the answer. We know that. And if we look again, public opinion polling, NRA members today, they want comprehensive gun violence prevention legislation.
it is amazing. We have to start making the politician look like what the people are wanting and acting that way. Look, Jason.
Yeah, and it's the money in politics. It's the money that the NRA
Absolutely.
has. They're writing checks to our senators. That's why we need to overturn Citizens United. We need a constitutional amendment to overturn it and make the playing field equal and even again, and make sure that our members of Congress actually listen to the people, not the big money.
It's been my pleasure to have El Señor Jason Miller, Director of Campaigns and Development, Franciscan Action Network, and he also works with the Faithful Democracy. Look, thank you for all the work that you do. Thank you for what you're
so
trying
much
to accomplish. It is so important. It's been my pleasure to have you on Politics Done Right.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to be on, and thank you for having me on and continuing to use your voice and to speak out. That's what we all need to do.
Thank you. We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number one, subscribe to our channel, and number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.